When Dana White laughed and said Chuck Norris wouldn't last a round against a rookie, the arena itself went silent. It wasn't the usual roar of a fight crowd or the staged hush before a walkout. It was the sound of thousands of people realizing a line had just been crossed. It was fight night in Las Vegas, the air charged with sweat, lights, and money. The octagon glowed under spotlights, its steel mesh reflecting flashes from phones raised high. Music thumped through the loudspeakers, bass rattling plastic cups of beer. Everywhere you looked, faces shimmered with anticipation, a mix of loyalty, bloodlust, and the hunger for spectacle. But when Dana delivered his line, something in the rhythm of the night broke. "We could put him against the weakest fighter we have," Dana said into the mic, grinning, "and he'd still lose." The words landed like a strike. Half the arena erupted in laughter. Young fans, half drunk, eager for any chance to mock the relic of an older era. The other half bristled. You could hear boos under the laughter, a murmur of discontent rolling like distant thunder. "Respect him!" someone shouted from the upper rows, quickly drowned out by jeers and whistles. The cameras cut to the front rows, where Chuck Norris sat quietly, almost hidden in the shadows. He wasn't in a suit, no security detail, no Hollywood entourage, just a plain jacket, a black shirt, jeans. His hair silver now, his face lined but steady. His expression didn't shift at Dana's words. He didn't smile, didn't frown. He simply looked forward, as though the noise around him were weather to be endured. That composure made the moment stranger, sharper. Because if he had snapped back, it would have been theater. If he had waved, it would have been nostalgia. But his silence in the middle of that storm was heavier than any comeback. The arena could feel it. Phones angled toward him. Screens lit his face in blue, showing eyes that weren't angry but alert, alive. People wanted to catch him flinching. He didn't. He sat so still, it made the mockery louder, more obvious. Dana leaned into the silence, feeding off it like he always did. "Look, folks," he said, pacing across the stage, "I get it. We all love the movies. The roundhouse kicks, the cowboy hats, the memes. But this," he pointed toward the cage where the night's fighters were warming up, "this is real. This is where legends come to die." The laughter rose again, but unease braided through it now. Even those who clapped felt a hesitation, because the man in the shadows hadn't reacted, and that lack of reaction was starting to feel less like weakness and more like patience. The camera zoomed on Chuck again, tight on his eyes. They weren't dull with age. They were bright, steady, unblinking. It was the look of someone who had weathered worse insults than this, and who knew that the moment would circle back. An older fan in the stands muttered to his son, "He's still got it." "You'll see," the boy laughed nervously, glancing at his phone. The crowd began to split, visibly and audibly. Younger fans laughed louder, trying to smother their own nerves. Older fans leaned forward, arms crossed, waiting. A chant sputtered from one corner of the arena. "Chuck! Chuck!" only to be drowned out by boos, then to resurface again, louder. Dana smirked at the tension, knowing he had made the night bigger than the card. "What?" he asked, pretending innocence. "You think he could take even one of my guys?" The lights shifted. The crowd buzzed. For a moment, the spectacle threatened to swallow the sport itself. And in the center of it all, one man sat unmoving, his face impassive, his eyes calm but sharp, as if he were the only one not fooled into thinking this was just a show. Nobody realized that his silence, more than Dana's provocation, had just set the stage for what would follow. Just wondering, where are you watching from? Write it down. Bellow. Dana wasn't ready to let the silence fade. He paced the stage, mic clutched like a weapon, smiling with the confidence of a man who believed the crowd would always be on his side. "You think I'm joking?" he shouted. "You want proof? Let's give him somebody. Not a star, not a champion, just one of ours." The arena screens flickered, then froze on a photo. A young fighter's face filled the jumbotron, messy hair, scar above his right brow, eyes bright with the kind of reckless hunger only youth can produce. The caption stamped across the bottom: Ricky Sundown Marsh, 0-2 UFC, 7-4 Pro. His record wasn't impressive, but his swagger carried the weight of ambition unchecked. The crowd reacted instantly. Half the arena booed at the sight of a rookie offered up like bait. The other half cheered. Mockery, anticipation, the thrill of spectacle. Someone yelled, "Feed him to Norris!" while another barked, "He'll fold in 30 seconds." Ricky emerged from the tunnel wearing warm-ups, gloves stuffed under his arm. 26, wiry build, restless energy spilling from every step. His grin looked rehearsed, but his eyes flicked nervously to the cameras. He raised a hand, soaking in the noise, forcing himself to play the role handed to him. Dana wrapped an arm around Ricky's shoulders, beaming. "This is the future," he declared. "He's young, hungry, ready to prove himself. Put him in with anybody. He fights. Put him in with a legend." He paused dramatically, letting the crowd finish for him with laughter and jeers. And the truth shows. The microphone was passed. Ricky held it for a beat, then tilted his head toward the darkened section where Chuck sat. "I grew up watching your movies, man," he said, voice steady, but laced with youth's arrogance. "But movies ain't fighting." It was the kind of line that didn't need to be cruel. It was dismissive enough. Half the crowd roared with laughter, enjoying the dig. The other half bristled. A chant of "Respect him" started in the upper rows, weak at first, but stubborn. The cameras swung immediately to Chuck. He stood, not fast, not dramatic. Just rose, smoothed the front of his jacket, and stepped into the aisle. The effect was immediate. Thousands of conversations died mid-sentence. Phones lifted like a tide, blue screens throwing harsh light across his face. He didn't wave, didn't glare, didn't acknowledge Dana or Ricky. His eyes were fixed solely on the octagon. The silence deepened. Even the fans who had been laughing a second before now found themselves muttering nervously, caught between amusement and unease. A chant began in the nosebleeds. "Chuck! Chuck!" At first clumsy, then stronger as it rolled downward, pulling momentum with it. Ricky's grin faltered. He tried to mask it with a shrug, muttered quickly into the mic, "All love." "But this isn't the 80s. It's different here." His voice cracked slightly, and the crowd noticed. Dana, refusing to lose control, clapped his hands into the mic, making the speakers pop. "Settle down, folks. Exhibition only. No danger, no knockouts. 30 seconds, no headshots, protective gear. Just a showcase." The rules sounded thin. No one believed this would remain friendly. Chuck walked steadily toward the barricade. Security stiffened, unsure whether to intervene. One guard shifted aside without being asked, moved by something older than orders. Dana leaned into the moment, savoring it. "Sundown versus the legend himself." His voice was soaked in hype. He lifted Ricky's arm, holding it high like a prize. But Ricky wasn't smiling anymore. His eyes followed Chuck's steps toward the cage with growing unease. The arena transformed. Families leaned forward. Fans gripped the railings. The air felt heavy with something inevitable. Even the referees waiting ringside looked uneasy, sensing they were about to officiate something no contract had prepared them for. Chuck reached the stairs. He placed one boot on the steel, the clang cutting through the noise system sharper than any bass. His hand pressed briefly against the post of the cage, testing it. Then he nodded once, almost imperceptibly. A referee with a mustache stepped into the cage, lifting both hands for calm. "Exhibition bout," he said, voice steady but betraying tension. 30 seconds. Light contact. Touch gloves. Keep it clean. The door swung open with a metallic groan. Chuck entered the octagon without hesitation. Ricky followed, jaw tight now, bravado shrinking with every step. The cage door clanged shut. The lock snapped. Phones lit the faces of thousands waiting. The referee looked at them both. "Ready?" Chuck didn't blink. Ricky nodded, swallowing hard. The referee raised his hand. The arena dropped into perfect silence, heavy and electric. The gong sounded. The bell's tone still hung in the rafters when the referee brought them to center. Close up, the cage smelled like canvas and disinfectant, and something metallic that never quite left. Vaseline shone on Ricky's cheekbones. The headgear's strap clicked under his jaw. He rolled his shoulders, forcing a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Try not to break a hip out there," he said, casual enough to pass as banter, loud enough to be picked up by the boom mic. A few pockets of the crowd laughed too quickly, grateful for something to hold on to. Chuck's glove touched Ricky's with a clean thud. "You'll learn fast," he said, not unkind, not loud, just flat enough to register as a promise. They stepped back. The referee's palms hovered between them, then ghosted away. The mesh's shadow drew gray bars across their faces, like a reminder of stakes everyone pretended weren't there. Above them, a camera lens blinked red and leaned in until it found the eyes it had been hunting all night. Ricky's were bright and busy, flicking. Posture, distance, coach, exit, back to Chuck. A bead of sweat ran from the scar above his brow and stopped at the headgear's rim, refusing to fall. He bounced once, twice, left heel skittering on the tape seam. Chuck's eyes were still. Not dead, not nostalgic, operational. Breath low, shoulders low. The left hand floated just above the line of his ribs, the right hand quiet, near his cheek, the placement of someone who'd removed everything decorative and left what worked. From cage side, Dana leaned into his mic like a stage whisperer. "Light contact. Everyone breathe. It's a showcase." The speakers carried the words. Nobody believed them. The building's noise folded inward, not louder, but denser, as if mass were being added to the silence instead of the sound. Ricky heard his coach, and didn't at the same time. Touch him early, show him angles, stay long. His mouthpiece clicked once against his teeth when he swallowed. He saw the old man's hands, steady, annoyingly still, and felt an urge he didn't recognize, to make the first exchange look good for the camera. Pride, disguised as tempo. Chuck watched the way Ricky's weight lived over the balls of his feet and shifted a thumb's width. The movement barely disturbed the air. The chant, ragged a minute ago, found rhythm. "Chuck! Chuck!" It rolled from the cheap seats down to the floor and lost syllables until it became a pulse. Older fans didn't chant. They leaned forward with their hands clasped, the way you do when you're listening for something only you and your father would hear. Ricky twitched his lead hand, rangefinder, nothing on it, then snapped a real jab behind it. It cut air cleanly and came back on a straight rail. His eyes widened, just a shade, registering the lack of contact. He'd already begun to load a second step. Adrenaline makes liars of good plans. Chuck didn't swat. He didn't slip with a flourish. He let the glove pass through space he wasn't occupying and noted how Ricky reset. Hips first, then shoulders, then feet. the map updated in his head. "Keep it playful," the referee murmured, too soft for the crowd. He said it like a man repeating a prayer he didn't write. Dana, smelling the electricity, paced the dais with a showman's smile. Camera 2 cut to him. Then, against the director's order, snapped back to a tight on Chuck's eyes, because framing found its own courage. In that tight frame, the contrast was brutal. The younger man's grin ticking at the corners, the old man's gaze like a level balanced between two knuckles. Somewhere in the upper deck, a plastic beer cup rattled down concrete steps and came to rest. The arena flinched like it had broken something sacred. Ricky stepped again, dipping left hip like he might level change, then popped a hook that threatened to be flashy. He missed by a breath, air brushing Chuck's cheek guard. His gloves' leather whispered against nothing. The crowd made a sound they didn't have a word for. Chuck's feet kissed the mat, ball, then heel, the left pointing 12 minutes past noon. He didn't counter. He refused the bargain of early applause. He let the absence of panic say what it needed to. Ricky heard his coach again. "Breathe, kid. Reset." And felt the hunger bite his gut. Pride argued with patience. He threw a calf kick half-heartedly, felt shin meet pad, felt the thud travel up his femur like an unwelcome memo. Chuck's stance didn't crack. It adjusted, a click you could feel if you were standing where Ricky was, and nowhere else. People who'd laughed earlier were on their feet now without knowing when they'd risen. The woman in the denim vest pressed her knuckles to her mouth. A veteran in a bomber jacket shifted his weight onto the balls of his feet, as if the habit might help. Ricky feinted again, more honest this time, and saw the eyes acknowledge it without flinch or flight. Something inside him steadied and sharpened simultaneously. Okay, he thought, not to the crowd, not to the cameras, not to his coach, to himself. We're doing it for real, clean, but real. The ref's hand hovered like a guardian angel not sure what doctrine applied. Chuck's breathing stayed slow. He exhaled through his nose. The cage's mic didn't catch it, but the man across from him felt it. The way a diver feels current he can't see. Chuck's right hand drifted 2 inches, not to strike, to shorten the path if he had to. Ricky committed. He took the small step that turns motion into decision. Let the jab go as pure punctuation, then chain the thing that separates men who shadowbox from men who fight. He followed his right hand across the line, hips rotating, shoulder turning, angle closing. He wasn't reckless. He was young. There's a difference. The crowd's sound inverted. Roars siphoned into a collective inhale that lifted 10,000 chests at once. The production truck cut to a wide just in time to miss the detail, then cut back to a tight because somebody in the booth swore and trusted their gut. From the floor, Dana said something that didn't reach his own microphone. Ricky's lead foot landed inside the painted logo, weight rolling forward. His left shoulder dipped half an inch to sell the question of a level change he wasn't going to take. His right hand drew a line he believed in. The muscles in his forearm braided like cable. His mouth guard flashed between parted lips. Across from him, Chuck's left heel lifted a 1/4 inch. His right elbow tucked a fraction. His chin angled down enough to turn a target into a slope. His eyes didn't get bigger. The world behind them did. Gloves moved. Canvas whispered. And in the slice of time between intent and impact, between a young man's forward step and an old man's small correction, the entire arena hung on a single beat, hearts stuttering in unison, waiting to find out what would happen when promise met patience. The gong's echo hadn't died before Ricky lunged forward, desperate to make a point. He snapped a jab and barked over it. "Show me something, legend!" A kick whipped toward the calf, a hook at the guard. volume instead of precision. The crowd roared, unsure if it was watching skill or noise. Chuck gave them silence. He didn't throw back. He slipped, checked, blocked. Economy in motion. His feet moved inches, not yards. His hands redirected strikes instead of trading them. Ricky grinned at the cameras, but his eyes showed frustration. Nothing was landing. Dana clapped from the floor, trying to keep it light. "Touch him, Ricky! Make it a show!" His voice echoed against an audience that wasn't convinced. Ricky obliged, adding commentary between shots. "Not a movie set, old man," he jeered, shoving with his shoulder after a missed hook. The crowd booed, first scattered, then louder, sensing arrogance covering nerves. Whistles cut through. "Fight! Don't talk!" someone shouted, and others agreed. Chuck's expression never changed. A parry with two knuckles, a subtle shift at the waist, and Ricky's next punch hit air. He brushed aside a wild hook, reset his stance, and waited. The arena noticed. Patience was playing louder than aggression. Ricky, irritated, turned up the pace. A low kick cracked against shin and came back worse for him. A looping right grazed shoulder but found no target. He tried a knee, borderline illegal, earning a warning wave from the referee. His breathing got noisy under the headgear. The noise in the seats shifted, too. The boos weren't just at Chuck's stillness anymore. They were for Ricky's waist. The younger fighter tried to bully through. Forward, always forward, hoping momentum would carry him. Chuck let him, stepping just enough to guide, not stop. Then it happened. Ricky planted his left too far forward, shoulders square, eyes on Chuck's guard instead of his feet. Chuck read it in an instant. One precise step, his lead foot kissing Ricky's stride, his hand turning slightly at the bicep, and the rookie's balance disappeared. Ricky's momentum carried him past center. His arms flailed, slapped canvas, and the hip landed with a hollow thud. For a split second the arena froze, unsure if it had seen anything at all. Then noise exploded. Fans leapt to their feet, some laughing, some shouting, all realizing they'd just watched a man undone by something invisible. Phones tilted down to replay it. The chant that had sputtered earlier returned, sharper now. "Chuck! Chuck!" Ricky scrambled up fast, embarrassed. His face burned under the headgear. He clapped his gloves together, stomping as if to prove nothing had happened. But it had. Everyone saw it. The referee stepped between them with a palm raised. "Keep it clean," he warned, though Chuck hadn't broken a rule. Ricky nodded too hard, lips pressed tight. The broadcast director cut to Dana. For the first time all night, his grin was gone. His jaw worked, blazer adjusted nervously, eyes darting at the cage like he was trying to calculate what he'd set in motion. Ricky circled, furious. He feinted, jabbed, threw a body hook that missed by a breath. Chuck shifted, patient, making every miss louder than the strike itself. The crowd smelled blood, not Chuck's, but Ricky's pride spilling. They booed when Ricky shouted again, "Stop running!" The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Chuck hadn't run once. He'd only refused to waste motion. The fight had changed. It was no longer an exhibition, no longer a gimmick. The air in the arena felt heavier, the cage suddenly not a prop, but a test. Every fan could feel it. Legends don't age, they wait. And tonight, patience was carving arrogance apart, one small correction at a time. Ricky's gloves thumped together as he came forward again, trying to erase the embarrassment of the slip. His mouthguard clicked when he clenched his jaw. He rushed in with a jab-cross hook, feet heavy, shoulders tense. The strikes looked busy, but landed on forearms and air. Chuck absorbed them without a blink. He shifted his weight a fraction, hands moving like hinges. Catch, deflect, recenter. Nothing wasted. The contrast was brutal. Ricky noisy and wild, Chuck calm and exact. The crowd felt it. The earlier boos had turned to something else now. Anticipation. Every miss from Ricky drew murmurs. Every tiny correction from Chuck drew applause. A chant started again, stronger this time, moving through the seats like a tide. "Chuck! Chuck!" Dana cupped his hands to his mouth and barked from the floor. "Push him! Don't give him room!" His tone was less showman now, more nervous cornerman. He bounced on his heels like he could will Ricky's punches into effectiveness. The cameras caught it. The mask was slipping. Ricky launched a body kick, high and sloppy with frustration. Chuck stepped diagonally, let the shin sail past, and guided Ricky's balance with a soft parry at the elbow. The younger man spun half around and had to recover with a stumble. The arena gasped, then erupted in laughter. Ricky's pride was bleeding faster than his stamina. Chuck advanced just once, minimal but decisive. He timed Ricky's desperate jab, caught the wrist, and pivoted. In a blink, Ricky was off balance again, shoulder dragged past the line. Chuck didn't throw him. He let Ricky's own momentum carry him down, a controlled tumble that landed the rookie on one knee. The place exploded. People shot to their feet, arms raised, beers spilling, phones waving in the air to capture the moment. The sound was no longer divided. It was unified. They weren't mocking Chuck anymore. They were celebrating him. Ricky slapped the canvas, furious, and scrambled upright. His chest heaved, sweat dripping into his eyes. For the first time, uncertainty showed through the bravado. He looked at Chuck and saw not an aging actor, but a man dismantling him piece by piece without breaking a sweat. "Work, Ricky! Work!" Dana shouted again, voice cracking this time. His hands made frantic motions toward the cage as though he could puppet the fight. The cameras caught his face, a flash of unease replacing his earlier grin. Chuck stood center cage, hands low but ready, breathing steady. He didn't need to chase. Ricky came again, wilder now, his shots more looping, less structured. Chuck redirected each one. A forearm here, a hip shift there, each redirection cutting Ricky's rhythm shorter. It was a clinic, and the crowd knew it. The chant reached a fever pitch. "Chuck! Chuck! Chuck!" Entire sections stomped their feet, the arena floor vibrating like a drum. The energy had shifted fully. The crowd was no longer a passive witness, but an active force pressing Ricky into desperation. Then came the moment nobody could deny. Ricky threw a clumsy overhand, leaving his torso wide open. Chuck slipped under, hooked an arm behind Ricky's back, and executed a textbook hip toss. Clean, perfect, effortless. Ricky's body lifted off the ground and hit the canvas flat, the thud echoing in every chest in the arena. For a heartbeat, there was silence, shock stealing sound itself. Then, the eruption, a roar so loud the cameras struggled to capture it, thousands of voices shredding into raw disbelief and admiration. The referee darted in, not to stop, but to check. Ricky was already rolling to his side, red-faced, eyes wide with disbelief. He looked up at Chuck, like a man staring at something he'd underestimated too late. Chuck stepped back, offering space, no malice in his movements. He let Ricky rise. The gesture said everything. This wasn't punishment. This was instruction. The younger man climbed to his feet, legs unsteady, chest pumping. His bravado was gone. His eyes darted to Dana, searching for reassurance. But Dana's face was pale, his jaw clenched tight. He clapped his hands once, weakly, trying to salvage pride, but the arena's roar drowned him out. The noise had become elemental. The crowd wasn't just watching. They were part of it now, rising as one organism, shouting, stomping, chanting, until the cage itself seemed to rattle. Every eye in the building was on Chuck, and Chuck didn't gloat. He simply reset his stance, calm, ready, as if to say, "We're not finished yet." Ricky's chest heaved, his gloves twitched, but his eyes betrayed him. Confusion, fear, respect, all colliding. The balance of the fight had shifted permanently. The rookie's aggression was unraveling, and in its place, the weight of a legend pressed down like gravity. The round wasn't over. There was still fight left in Ricky, but the arena knew the truth. This was no exhibition anymore. This was a dismantling, and the roar of "Chuck! Chuck! Chuck!" made it clear. Everyone in that building knew whose night it was becoming. Ricky's chest rose and fell like a bellows as he paced the octagon. Sweat darkened the straps of his headgear, and every breath came harsher, audible even through the roar of the arena. He tried to shake the sting from his legs, flexing his calves, but the tremor betrayed him. He had been chasing all fight, and now the chase was eating him alive. His eyes flicked toward Dana, searching for that grin of reassurance. But the promoter's face had turned to granite, jaw set, lips pressed into a line that promised no comfort. Ricky barked at himself, "Come on!" half pep talk, half plea, and drove forward again. He pumped a jab, then slung a looping right, following with a sloppy clinch. His arms locked onto Chuck's biceps like desperation clinging to a branch. For a moment, he thought he had him. He squeezed. He shoved. He prayed the cameras would catch strength instead of panic. But Chuck didn't resist with force. He resisted with balance. His hands didn't fight. They redirected. A small twist of the waist shifted Ricky's chest into empty space, his hip meeting resistance where he least expected. Ricky's breath caught. The geometry betrayed him. "Work!" Dana shouted from outside, the bark sharp, nervous. He slapped the cage post, trying to wake his fighter. The sound cut across the arena like a misfired cue. Phones captured it, and the crowd laughed bitterly. The aura of control Dana had worn all night was crumbling on broadcast. Ricky broke free and circled wide, head down. His gloves tapped together, more nervous tick than tactic. He feinted low, then popped up with a hook, selling effort instead of clarity. Chuck's forearm met it gently, guided it past his temple with the ease of someone moving a curtain aside. The crowd gasped. The sound wasn't for a landed strike, it was for a strike erased. The rookie's feet began to betray his heart. He shortened his stance, corners cut sharper, his patience fraying. A kick snapped out of habit. Shin met shin, the crack loud enough to echo. Ricky hissed, face twisted. He swung again, wild, overcommitted, mouthguard flashing as his breath ripped out. The cage had become smaller with every miss, every counter that never came. Chuck read it like weather. He stepped forward, not a charge, just a step. The audience saw the shift and rose to their feet, sensing a threshold. Ricky flung one more desperate overhand, hips rolling through, teeth clenched with everything left in him. Chuck slid inside. His left hand caught the wrist, his right pressed over the triceps. A shoulder turn set the frame, a hip shift set the line. The movement was clinical, practiced, inevitable. Ricky's feet left the canvas. For an instant, the crowd inhaled as one. A man airborne, a legend grounded. Then the throw. Clean. Textbook. No violence, just precision. Ricky's back smacked the canvas with a thud that rippled into the rafters. His arms slapped instinctively, trying to soften the fall, but pride took the harder hit. Silence. Perfect, heavy, awe-filled silence. Lasted 1, 2 beats. Then the roar. Not laughter, not derision, but a wave of sound so deafening it swallowed its own echo. Strangers clutched each other, mouths wide, voices ragged. The chant that had haunted the building all night surged again, this time unified. "Chuck! Chuck! Chuck!" Ricky rolled to his side, eyes wide, chest heaving. The bravado had drained from him, replaced with something raw. Recognition. He looked at Chuck the way a student looks at the proof he couldn't solve until the answer was drawn for him. Dana didn't move. Cameras found him again and framed the absence of his smile. He clapped once, awkward, but even that died halfway. The man who had orchestrated the spectacle was now watching it spin beyond his reach. Chuck stood above Ricky, hands open, no threat in his stance. He waited, calm as ever, for the younger man to rise. Ricky climbed to his knees, then to his feet, legs shaking but functional. The crowd applauded the act itself, standing up in the wake of humility. The referee moved between them, glancing at the clock. "Time," he called. The bell followed, ringing like a release. But the fight's ending wasn't in the bell. It was in what happened next. Chuck reached for Ricky's wrist and raised it high, showing the crowd the young man's courage. The gesture tore through the tension like a blade. The arena's roar softened into applause, warmer now, grateful. People clapped for Ricky too, but only because Chuck had told them to. Ricky's head dropped, then lifted again. He nodded once, eyes damp with exhaustion and something more. Respect. In Ricky's corner, his coach wiped at his face and blamed the lights. Security guards who had kept straight faces all night allowed themselves to clap. Even the referee lingered, reluctant to break the spell. Dana stood at last. He reached for the microphone, thought better, and set it down. The cameras caught him in silence, the promoter who had laughed too loud now unable to fill the void. Chuck crossed the cage slowly, his stride even. He placed a hand on Ricky's shoulder, tapped once, then turned toward the chanting crowd. For the first time all night, he gave them a nod. Not grand, not theatrical, just enough to acknowledge he'd heard them. The cage door opened with a metallic groan. Chuck stepped down, boots ringing the steps like punctuation. The chant rolled after him into the tunnel, refusing to fade. By morning, clips of the throw would loop endlessly. Commentators would argue whether it was a judo sweep, a karate trick, or simply mastery. But the ones who had been there wouldn't bother with terms. They'd tell each other what it felt like, that they'd seen patience dismantle arrogance, that they'd seen the truth hiding behind the myth, because it was clear in the very first round, and truer by the last. Legends don't grow old. They wait. And when the moment comes, they remind the world who they have always been.